everyone, welcome to the 429th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Janko Rutgers.
That's right, you guys. I have a special co-host this week while Kevin is on a much-needed vacation. Janko is actually my former colleague at GigaOM, and he is also a well-regarded journalist and the creator of a newsletter called Low Pass. So, yay, Janko, big welcome to you. This week, we're going to be talking about Roku and its plans to control your smart home, Samsung making a big bet on smart energy. We've got some fun news on the AI front from Josh.ai. We've got small news bits from SimpliSafe, Tapo, Eve, and IKEA. We'll also talk a little bit about some new gear from Nanoleaf. And our guest this week is Scott Ford, who is the CEO and co-founder of Pepper. And they're offering a new cyber insurance product for their smart home device customers. We'll also be hearing from our sponsor, Blink. But first, let's hear from this week's sponsor, Particle. Do you have an idea for a connected product? Apply for a Particle development board and build your prototype on Particle's platform at no cost. Plus, benefit from up to 100,000 data operations per month and support for up to 100 devices. Get started today by going to iotpodcast.com/prototype. That's iotpodcast.com/prototype. All right. So first up, hello, Janko. Do you want to tell everybody, because I feel like many of my listeners would totally love Low Pass because you're breaking all kinds of scoops on things they care about. What do you cover?
Yeah, Low Pass is a relatively new newsletter still. I started it earlier this year. But before that, I was at Protocol until that publication unfortunately shut down late last year. I was doing the entertainment newsletter over there, co-writing it. And Low Pass is sort of a continuation of that. I'm covering sort of the intersection of technology and entertainment with a big focus on the things that come after the smartphone. So AR, VR, smart speakers, ambient computing, everything with a little bit of an entertainment lens, but also kind of the question like, what's next? All the fun stuff, essentially.
Yeah, it's like, I don't really think we're competitors, but we kind of are, but I don't care because I love what you do. And I think you're so smart. And we're going to start off talking about something that is so, I don't know if it's near and dear to your heart, but Roku. You've been covering this company since it started.
For a long time, yes. I do remember back in the GigaOM offices, like unpacking one of the very first players out of a brown box and wondering what it was. So yeah, it's been a while. And now they've come a long way. They did streaming devices first, then smart TVs, speakers, and a bunch of stuff. And now they're doing smart home stuff. And that kind of bubbled up this week again when Axios wrote about, I think they spoke to their CEO, Anthony Wood, why they're doing this. And it's a good question, right? Because it's a smart TV company, it's a dongle company, it's been doing a lot of streaming, and now suddenly they have all these smart home devices. Last year they started with lights, connected outlets, all kinds of stuff. But when you look closer at those products, it's basically repackaged or rebranded Wyze products. So the security cameras, the light bulbs, all of that you could buy before from Wyze. Now it's relabeled as Roku. They come up with their own app as well. And then this year, I think in March or so, they officially announced it. I was able to sort of scoop them on that a week or two before. They went into home security. So now they have a very affordable home security product. I think the base set to get started is like $100, and you can self-monitor it, or you can pay $10 a month for monitoring, which is also very affordable when you compare it to some of the competitors, obviously. Again, it's Wyze hardware, and then I think a third-party vendor that Wyze also uses for the monitoring service. Still doesn't really answer the question, why is Roku doing any of those things and why should people care? Well, first of all, they're having some integrations with their TVs. So especially with the security cameras, you can sort of watch those feeds on your Roku TV or Roku streaming device relatively easily. It's tied into that. They also are, they are a very big company in the US. They're like one of the biggest, if not the biggest smart TV platform in the US. They sell tons of devices. They figured out that these cheap dongles and affordable smart TVs, I don't want to say cheap all the time because, some of them are fairly decent, right? It's not the top end, but...
Well, we use a Roku streamer box, and we have used that forever because it was independent for so long. So I'm like, oh, this is the easiest, best way to do it.
I still know what you used before, but that's a story for another episode or whatever. Down the history books with Boxy. Yeah, like back to Roku. They have figured out how to sell these devices at cost, sometimes below cost actually during the pandemic, and then make that money back with services, with primarily advertising, but they also resell subscription services on their platform and make a lot of money with that. They're not a profitable company most quarters, if at all, but, they're still sort of in growth mode. IoT doesn't really make sense on the surface in that mix, but I think there's some reasons why they did that. And one of them obviously is the tie-in with the TV. So smart home and TV are sort of growing together because it is a big display in your living room. It makes a lot of sense as a hub or as a place to watch those video feeds from your security cameras and all those things. And other companies are doing that as well, right? So Amazon has some stuff. Google has been slower, but also integrating its Nest stuff with Google TV and Chromecast and so forth. So there's some connection there. And then it's obviously also just for the company an additional revenue stream where they've primarily made their money with advertising. They do want to not just be dependent on an ad market because, as we all know, that's not always great, especially during the pandemic and recession fears and whatnot. Advertisers have been kind of slow, and that's especially true for some of those advertisers that Roku has made money with. So subscription fees are great. But for a company like Roku to start a video service that could sell for subscriptions is not easy because then you need to buy a ton of content. And this is an easy way to do that without licensing Hollywood blockbusters, right? You just sell to your same audience, which is sizable in the US, and say, oh, you already have this stuff. You know that our products are cheap, but they work. And we already have your credit card. By the way, they have a Roku Pay payment service thing. So pay us $10 a month and you can get security, or the cameras also have various subscription tiers for cloud recording, all those things. So it makes kind of sense in a way.
Let me ask you, because Anthony Wood at the event, he mentioned that they're building a smart home OS. And, I have sat through many a smart home OS. What the heck is that? In my world, it would be actually like a software platform that I communicate with all of the devices in my home, right? And we don't have that today, partly because we don't have interoperability in these devices. It's possible that this is now the right time because we're real down on Matter at the show, but we acknowledge that it is coming. It's not what we wanted it to be, but is it enough to build an OS for a smart home? I kind of doubt it. So that feels iffy, but there is definitely this movement. Amazon has pulled back from Madam A, not just because it's losing a lot of money, but because people are like, I only do like 4 things, and that doesn't make Amazon money. It doesn't really, for a lot of people, it's not the brains of their smart home. It's just for like a 20 to 30% of us who are crazy. And, that's fine. So Amazon is also looking at pulling the TV in a little bit more here. And I'm curious, what is the role of, like, for normal mainstream people? Where does the TV fit into a smart home? Is it going to be something we talk to, something that shows? Is it like always on display? I don't know.
I think it can be all of those things. And I think that's the thing, like for people who are really into smart home stuff, oftentimes it's maybe one person in the household driving it and they have all the apps, or if they got the Matter stuff, they have one app that can interoperate with everything, but then it's on your one phone, or maybe it's on a tablet if you're nice and you want the rest of your family to also be able to turn on the light and off. I mean, there's switches and everything, but you know what I mean. It can be challenging stuff, and some people have figured it out, but the TV is a communal device. It makes it easier. Smart displays can sort of have the same functionality, but I think a lot of people, again, smart displays are in the kitchen. For a lot of people, they don't have another one in the living room. Google would love to have their devices on every nightstand, but I don't think that really happened. So TVs are devices that are already in living rooms. They're in a lot of bedrooms too. People have the TV on hours and hours a day. So it makes a lot of sense to add additional functionality to that. Flip side of that is TVs aren't a very profitable business, and especially for companies like Roku and some of their partners, they sell these devices, again, very affordably. You make maybe like I don't know, $5 or $10 if you sell a $300 TV. And that's not really a good business either. So you need to figure out ways to monetize that. And again, adding services of any kind that you can monetize to your TV helps with that, obviously. So on the one hand, I think it sort of makes, in a lot of times, it makes sense for consumers as a communal device. You know, a lot of remotes, most remotes have voice functionality these days. You can talk to your TV. It can be a big giant dashboard. It's on all the time anyway. You can have picture-in-picture stuff, ideally. But then it's also obviously always a business story where layering any of these things on there, being able to sell people more things helps these companies make more money, quite frankly. And I think to the point of, again, going back to why is Roku in particular doing this and why have they struck this alliance with Wise for all of this? They have tried multiple times to go beyond their TV products. I don't know if you remember that, but a couple years ago they tried to do Wi-Fi devices. They tested one with their consumers. That was a very weird product because it was like, it's a Wi-Fi extender or mesh thing, but primarily to make your TV work better. If your TV doesn't work well, you buy this extra device. And they tested it and they developed it in-house and all these things, and then ultimately they decided not to sell it because it was such a weird product and there was no way to actually monetize that beyond just selling it. Then they did smart speakers, right? So you can buy Roku speakers that were meant to be more like Sonos speakers eventually, but I wrote about that earlier this year as well. They've pulled back a lot from that. A bunch of people that they had hired were either laid off or have left since. They wanted to multi-room audio and all of that didn't happen. So they've tried many things, and now with Wise, they're like, oh, well, these guys can make this stuff for us for cheap, and we just add a little bit of sugar on top, an app, and then we can charge people. So it makes sense, but also I think it's a defensive thing, right? Because ultimately you have Amazon, it's one of their biggest competitors. You have Google. All of these companies have tight integrations. They have very capable operating systems for TVs. They are embracing Matter and all those wonderful things.
I feel like Google, they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I don't feel like they're a credible competitor. That Google, they're just like, I'm sick of it. I'm done. Moving on. And we're not sure what they're doing with their hardware business. It's not making the money. They're definitely cutting things left and right. Amazon, I think, is much more interesting, especially with the iRobot acquisition hopes, because iRobot has actually a very compelling smart home kind of OS plan. But we'll move on from this because it's so much TV, too much TV. We got to talk about light switches too, and smart energy management, because this week, Samsung SmartThings, which I'm still using on occasion, I want to say it was 2021 that they launched a smart energy effort. And with this, you could actually toggle on an app, for lack of a better word, it's an app or whatever in the SmartThings application that help manage your energy. And this week, what they're doing is they're making it much smarter and less manually controlled, and then adding more devices to it. So this is the SmartThings Energy. They would probably call it a service. I'm going to call it a service, not an app. I've decided this, y'all. Okay.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, except it's not a thing. It's not a physical thing. That's why this is so hard. What you can do is you can add more devices, including your Samsung appliances, to demand response programs. Demand response is when your utility is like, holy cow, we're using way too much electricity. We're going to brown out the grid. Everybody's got to reduce. And they'll automatically do this. These have been around for decades, actually. I used to have one before I had connected devices. My apartment was part of it in Austin. And they would just reach in and control the thermostat in my apartment. I mean, I opted into the program, but other than that, I had nothing. So what Samsung's doing here is now through your SmartThings app, you can sign up for demand response programs, and you can now add more than your HVAC system. So more than just your thermostat. You can add these Samsung appliances, and Samsung already has things where if you're using smart plugs and switches, they can also pull that into not a demand response program, but just better utility. So there's two elements here. There's better optimization of anything that's using electricity in your home through the smart energy service. And then there's this new element tying more devices into demand response. Now, if you opt into something like this, you have to think about the repercussions. And I don't think people do this very often. Yanko, are you on a demand response program?
No, I'm on a timed use plan, which sort of incentivizes me to use electricity during off-peak hours because we have an electric car, but it's not timed to actual peaks. It's just like based on the general pattern.
If they don't have this already, they will soon incorporate all of that information into this. Depending on the relationship with your utility, they can offer different functionality. They've just last month, they did some deals with utilities to actually give money back for people in addition to the normal incentives for demand response. But I believe that was in New York State. So not in California where you are, not in Washington where I am. But anyway, the idea here is that it's going to just become easier for your home to be responsive to both power needs and availability, but also hopefully over time, pricing. And instead of you having to do it, other people will do it for you. Oh, but also be aware when you sign up for demand response, what's going to happen is when it's really hot or when it's really cold, you might be a little less comfortable if you sign up for this. And now that they're bringing in additional appliances, it might be that at 5 o'clock in the summer in Texas, you're not going to be able to dry your clothes if you sign up for this.
You're not only going to be sweating, but you also can't wash your laundry. Wow.
Right now, you can opt in and out during a demand response action, but the automation here is to automatically do it, which I think is actually good, honestly.
And it makes sense considering that Samsung makes a lot of appliances that are just because of the nature of those appliances, power hungry. Washing machines, dishwashers, all those things use a lot of power compared to the light bulbs that everybody likes to switch out and scold their kids about. So having those more smartly used during off-peak hours makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good thing. And I think it's the beginning of, we're going to see more of this. And I have an open question on, are we going to get this from our smart home OS, right? That Roku or Samsung or someone is building? Are we going to get it through a deal with our utilities directly? Or will we go through our utility through the OS? Or are we going to get it through a Schneider Electric or somebody who's providing our smart breaker boxes and software? And right now, this is an open field for all kinds of people. So we're seeing everybody come in.
It seems like everybody wants to be the new middleman for that too, like energy management. Like there's the Nest Demand Plus program or whatever it's called. I don't quite remember it, but sort of positions Google there. Now maybe Samsung wants to be there too to possibly strike deals with utilities at some point.
Yeah, Samsung is striking deals with utilities directly. So yes, that is totally a thing that is happening. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this, Yanko, but in 2013, Google had a power on division, or they had a whole division devoted to this. So it's finally coming back around. Yay. If you, we're just old. Speaking of smart home OSs, again, Josh.ai, which is a company that we talk about a lot because they're pretty innovative. They've done a lot with natural language processing, and they are I call them a Cedia type company because this is a company that you're not going to buy anything off the shelf of as a normal consumer. This is something you're going to go through a pro installer to get. But Josh has been on the scene for a while with a really advanced voice system, and they've added things like location. So if you have enough of these Josh microphones installed in your home, it knows where you are in the home and then adds that context that we've been talking about. It's pretty advanced. It's pretty sweet. And this week they brought in Josh GPT. That's right. They're bringing generative AI and large language models into the home. And I mean,
they must have used AI to come up with that name, right? It's
yeah.
Never, as a human, possibly come up with such a creative name, but
yeah, but their other device they launched. So there's Josh GPT, and then there's Josh Remote. So clearly, super creative here.
Keeping it simple, nothing wrong with that.
I'm not averse to it. So what's happening is, look, AI is not taking over your home. What they're doing is they're using generative AI to answer the big questions, not the big questions, but things like, oh, I need a recipe for dinner tonight. We like fish and vegetables, right? And then it'll show you these things. It's also doing a lot with trying to smartly figure out where to put the content. Your Josh speaker will talk to you if it's short, but for something like recipes, it's going to send it to the Josh app on your phone. So it's basically adding this capability that we've talked about for a while, just adding that extra layer of smartness onto their, we'll call it their home operating system. Sure. And I'm excited about it. But I was also like a little freaked out about it because
some things will go wrong with this. Like once your home assistant starts hallucinating and inventing people living in your house or making up random recipes, it could get interesting.
It could get interesting. I don't think it'll make up people living in your house. And I was also worried about privacy and user data because there is a functionality of like when you're training these models or using this data, it pulls in some of the stuff that you've asked it about, right? Or in the case of your smart home, it might pull in information like, hey, this person's gone during the workday or whatever, that sort of information. So I asked Josh, I was like, hey, what is the information that you're using to personalize your GPT responses? And they were like, it is only the user's first name and gender. So, hi, Stacy. I kind of feel like knowing that I'm a woman is weird, but sure, as a woman who is in a male-dominated industry, every time I get a lot of ads for things that I'm like, I don't know that I'm interested in servers. Or whatever I get. But they also do a user's age, which is optional, and where you're located, which is also optional, but it's really helpful for things like, hey, what's a good restaurant near me that I would like?
Well, I'm glad that there's a million Yonkos in the Bay Area, so there's no way that anybody will ever reverse engineer this to figure anything out about me. But yeah, they're trying.
I was going to say, I don't know, Yonko. Well, I don't actually know where you live, but are there Yonkos on your street?
Yeah, no.
No.
I've met like one other Yonko in my life, so.
Okay. I was like, I didn't know there were a lot of Yonkos in the Bay Area.
No, I was joking.
And see, Kevin does this all the time, and I still don't know. Okay. They also launched this remote. Yonko, you like remotes? Do you have any thoughts on, it's fancy.
I mean, it's sort of hard to tell from they announced a bunch of stuff, and so they just put this as a small section in the blog post. It looks sleek. It has a charging dock. From the looks of it, from the image, it shows you different rooms and then responds to the devices in those rooms. I'm not entirely clear. It's a touchscreen remote, and it offers obviously voice access. I'm not entirely sure about the touchscreen, what it offers here. Once you give me a touchscreen remote, I at least also want to have some media content on there. Maybe like for my smart speaker, maybe I want to have album art on there or something, right? Just a touchpad. D-pad on a touchscreen is the worst of both worlds in a way. D-pads work. Remotes have been around for a long time, and D-pads they work. It's very simple, up, down, left, right, it works. Especially for navigating anything on TVs or whatever. So you can add functionality with a touchscreen, but I don't know if this really does add that much. Sure, like you can make it a little bit more responsive to the individual devices and tell you which room you're actually responding to. So you can maybe have one remote for multiple rooms or your entire house. But I don't know. And did they announce a price for this yet? I mean, I guess they do not announce prices because they don't sell to consumers, right?
They don't sell to consumers. And I think part of it is you have to have a touchscreen remote at the high end. Like, right. That's just what you have to show. When you're fancy like that, when you're not buying the cheap Roku gear, as you persistently called it, you want a
that's fancy, why they love me.
You want a fancy remote. The other thing I forgot to tell y'all this, and I am so sorry. The ChatGPT functionality will also give you the ability to string together like a human sounding request, like, hey, Josh, turn off the lights, make it colder, and can you queue up something fun to watch with the kids on Netflix? And it will do all of those things.
That's actually quite neat.
It is. I mean, I would like that.
Given the many times that the Google Assistant has combined weird things to one thing on my shopping list, make me buy beer apples or whatever, even like being able to segment those things or
just turn on the light and lock the door.
Exactly.
It is a nice, let me rephrase that. It is a nice looking experience. I don't have Josh. I'm probably never going to have Josh because I'm just not that fancy. I am that fancy, but I'm not going to pay that much. Sorry. But it's really an indication of where we want this to go. So I'm excited about it. And we'll also see these features. I mean, it's no secret. Amazon is working to bring LLMs, large language models, to Madam A, and we'll definitely see that in the not too distant future. This is just first. All right, let's talk about SimpliSafe, other budget security products. They have 2 new sensors that are worth mentioning. They have a smoke and CO2 detector, and they also have a new 2nd generation motion sensor that can distinguish between people and pets. And I don't know if they're using a millimeter wave on the motion sensor. I have to assume they're using something a little bit more advanced than PIR, because PIR cannot distinguish between people and pets. And millimeter wave sensors are now becoming they're not ubiquitous, but they're getting out there. And the focus here in the security industry is basically reducing false positives. And SimpliSafe has been working with, if you have monitored security on your end, they will do a lot by pulling data from the sensors in your home during an emergency. Like if a motion alarm goes off and your alarm alerts and triggers, they'll also try to pull data from other things in the home to try to figure out, is this a false alarm? Which is really important. As anybody who's had a monitored home security system will tell you, there's been plenty of times someone has opened a door and not made it to the alarm pad in time. So that's kind of what this is about. Also, fun news and matter news, TP-Link, their Tapo brand, which brought us the smart plugs first, and I have them, and they work really well. They now have light switches. They have an in-wall Tapo smart Wi-Fi light switch. They have a smart Wi-Fi dimmer, and they have a mini Wi-Fi plug, which the other Wi-Fi plug was small, but this one's even smaller.
They're also very affordable. So the basic smart light switch is about $25. The smart dimmer is $28. And then the plug is $20. And you can buy packages of them.
Which is the same price as the other plug. So these are all Matter certified. Notice that they use Wi-Fi, not Thread. So we're still having some, not issues with Thread, but there's still some certain companies are not supporting Thread yet. They're only supporting Wi-Fi products. So this makes sense. The light switches, both of them do require neutral wire. So be aware that you do need that. They also won't work on 3-way circuits. I'm still waiting for my favorite light switch, Lutron, to support Matter. I know it's going to happen. Right, Lutron? Please? Anyway, maybe this is why I'm mad at Matter. All right. Eve, they may have something exciting, and I'm going to let you talk about it, Janko, because A, this was a scoop in a German publication, and B, you're my TV guy.
So yeah, Eve, obviously smart home company. It's basically an audio adapter. It's kind of nicely designed. So this was a little bit of a scoop, but they also won a Red Dot Design Award for this product. So it's not entirely, it's not officially announced, but it's sort of out there. But it's a AirPlay 2 adapter, so you can plug it into your legacy stereo system, or I think you can actually even also connect powered speakers to it, whatever, and then display music content from your iOS devices. Android users are sort of left out in the cold there a little bit. But it's not the first product like this. I think Belkin makes one as well. I want to say it's a nice looking product. For me, this is one of those things that I see and it makes my heart hurt a little bit, because Google had a perfect product, the Chromecast Audio, and then they discontinued it because they wanted to push the Assistant, and dongle that just does casting, doesn't really do anything with Assistant. And at the time they were like, yeah, now third parties can take this over and build their own, but nobody ever did. And so now there's better AirPlay products out there if you want to extend wireless audio streaming to your older stereo system than any of the Google stuff. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. And in other Scoopy news, our buddy Dave Zatz over at Zatz Not Funny is constantly hanging out in the FCC filings, and he discovered that IKEA has some filings set for some new smart home sensors. They look like open-close sensors. This isn't truly exciting. IKEA has moved from trådfri, which was their original kind of design that used a Zigbee base, to Dirihira. I always have the hardest time with that name, but these would work with their Dirihira hub and replace the trådfri motion sensor. So as they're going up there, basically, if you're on an IKEA system, I don't know that many people who are, but if you are, this is just, it's basically going to give you just a little bit more functionality.
So that is my question though. When I saw this product, I was like, well, this almost looks like a sensor from a home security system. Right? I know you can use open close sensors for a bunch of stuff. I remember you talking about this many years ago that you attach one to your liquor cabinet. I always like that story. But ultimately, this looks very close to an old school open close sensor for a window or a door. So makes you sort of wonder if they might go into this area too, or you think it's just about, well, once you open that door, my light goes on.
I mean, you could use it for anything. I mean, open close sensors are like, I've used them for like I said, the liquor cabinet to indicate like someone's opening the liquor cabinet. I've also used it for things like our medicine cabinet, just to make sure that like if you like keep your drugs all in the same drawer, you can be like, did I take my medicine today? Or you could get like a pill case, whichever you want. But those are the kind of things that I've done with them. I think part of it is,
Why get a pill case if you can just encrypt your entire house with sensors?
yeah, why get a pill case when you could buy a hub and then connect something to the hub and then continually manage that hub? That's crazy. Um, but what I think is happening here is IKEA, and I've talked to IKEA a lot about their smart home strategy, they've historically focused on what consumers want and in an area that makes sense for IKEA. So a more sustainable home is kind of IKEA's focus. So having the open close sensor could work for sustainability. If you tie that back into like an HVAC system, when your windows are open, you won't want your HVAC to go on. But what I really just think it is easy. Like, people buy security. Let's give them some security. But okay. And our final story for this week is Nanoleaf. They launched a bunch of stuff. None of it's like super smart home, but because, we love Nanoleaf here, they launched Nanoleaf 4D. This is a screen mirror and a light strip kit. And you can go from like mild ambiance all the way to like super intense, like mimicking the colors of the television on the light strip behind you. And it's happening automatically. It's compelling. I know Kevin has the Hue Sync and he likes it a lot for gaming. This is a similar product. It is a camera that's going to stick on the top of your TV and basically look down at it to figure out what colors are happening. And then it will relay that to the light strip and change the colors. It does come with a little privacy hexagon, because of course it's a hexagon for Nanoleaf, that you can stick over it. It is not sending any of your television data to the cloud. They were very adamant that all of this device processing is happening locally. So that is cool.
That makes a lot of sense, because once you have a camera that close, you probably can't get a lot of information about what's actually on TV.
Mm-hmm.
You just get like a blurry image that might be good for colors.
Yeah, I was like,
but that's
colors.
probably about it.
So this is going to be much cheaper than the Philips Hue Sync box and little lights. So they're going to have two light strip lengths, a 65-inch, and that's going to be $100, and an 85-inch that is $120. This will ship in July. And that's actually really, shoot, for that. I mean, that's kind of Father's Day's over, but like, I'm like, that's actually really doable for, I think. I don't know. Do you care about ambiance on your TV? Ambiance lighting on your TV?
Not that much. I think gamers are really into this type of stuff, especially once you have big screen monitors. There might be other ways to do that if you have already a computer attached to this, but if you just want to have like a plug and play solution and don't worry about any of that stuff, that might be a good way to do it. And gaming monitors are getting TV sized, getting up there like 40 inches or whatever. So that's good for that. If you want to really impress people with your TV, you can go for it too. I'm not in that camp, but
yeah. They also did a deal with Overwolf. Rather, they have an integration with Overwolf. And I didn't know about this because I'm not a gamer, but basically Overwolf it's a software platform that basically says if a game is integrated with it, when you like kill something or you achieve something in a game or you lose your life or whatever, it tells other devices. So in Nanoleaf's case, if you kill things, you could celebrate that with like, oh, fancy lights. Or if you die, they said it will turn blood red and all the lights around your gaming monitor will indicate that you died. I think that's,
So all your neighbors know too.
yeah, I thought that was really neat. I would like to see like the equivalent of Overwolf for sports, because I think there's a really cool opportunity for like diehard sports fans. There is nothing like that right now for sports, but I feel like, when your team scores a point, why isn't there? I used to have like an API integration with IFT that when my husband's team scored points, our lights would turn the color of the team in celebration. But it was terrible because the latency was so low. So I'm like, why don't we have an Overwatch? I mean, it was like 2 minutes afterwards, it'd be like, ding. And you're like, oh,
Hooray! Anticlimactic.
a bit. So and Nanoleaf is now doing black hexagons. So they look cool. I have fake wood hexagons, so I'm not going to make fun of the black hexagons, even though I kind of want to. I'm like, oh, so edgy, so black.
As you mentioned the sports stuff, I was thinking like I kind of want that for VR headsets, because now it looks sometimes a little odd when people do Beat Saber and randomly like contort in space without any context for people around them. But if the lights were going off, kind of like a disco effect while I'm dancing around there playing Beat Saber or whatnot, that would be kind of cool.
That would be nice. Everyone would be like, well, Yanko's having his own little party again.
Exactly.
Well, that concludes the news section. Now it's time for the Internet of Things podcast hotline. This is the segment of the show where we hear from you. And this week, the IoT podcast hotline is brought to you by Akenza. Create amazing IoT solutions with the Akenza low-code IoT platform. This includes an extensive library of device payload decoders, LoRaWAN connectivity as a service, a dashboard composer, and more. You can try it for free today at akenza.io. That's AKENZA.io. All right. This week, it is the end of the month, which means actually when this show comes out, you'll still have another day to give us a call and be entered to win the Keurig Smart Brewer at 512-623-7424. And this week, our question is actually, it's not a question, it's a statement. It's a statement of thanks from one of our listeners who was excited to actually use the bond. So we answered his question and he was like, hey, this is pretty cool. So let's hear it.
Hey, Stacey and Kevin, this is Keith Farmer calling from Glendale, Arizona. Giving you a follow-up on the question I had last month about how I can control my fans using my assistant or an app. And we talked about using the Bond app, and I think that was a fantastic purchase. I went ahead and pulled the trigger on it last month, and it has worked, exceeded my expectations. So I use both Google Home and Amazon Assistant. Both applications work perfect with the Bond application, although Google Home seemed to recognize it a little bit better, and it was an easier onboarding than the Amazon application was. Controlling my fans with either IR or RF, most of my fans were RF, which worked perfect, and the lights work, the multiple speeds work. I've been able to just tell my assistants to turn the power on at a particular speed, or I can say percentage, turn on the lights. It's been fantastic. The other bonus to it was kind of interesting is I've added odd remotes around my house that are like IR. Although if you do an IR, the bond has to be within range of the device. For example, I used LED lights around the TV, and now I can tell my assistants to turn it on or off. Can't switch the colors, but at least I can turn it on. So I thought that was kind of cool too. So I'm going to go around finding more remotes I can add to it. It reminds me of back in the day of like the Harmony remotes, where you can kind of learn remote codes and add them to your home theater applications. This device reminds me a lot like that. So where I thought it was only limited to like fireplaces and fans and blinds, this device seems to be more than that. Just wanted to give you an update on it. Great choice. Thank you for the recommendation. And I'll talk to you later.
Yay! I'm so glad we could help you. And y'all, now you know, the Bond, it's worth it if you have those IR remote issues. All right. That concludes this segment of the show. Remember, you can reach us at 512-623-7424. And throughout the rest of the month, you'll be entered to win that Keurig Smart Brewer. Now, stay tuned for our guest, Scott Ford, who is the CEO and co-founder of Pepper. Pepper recently introduced cyber insurance as part of kind of an add-on for their smart home customers. We'll talk about what it is, why, and a little bit about privacy. in a minute. But first, a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Blink. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. And this week's sponsor is Blink. Blink is a low-code IoT software platform with a unique mobile app builder. And today's guest is Irina Leshuk, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Blink. Hello, Irina. Could you just tell us a little bit more about Blink?
Thanks for having me, Stacy. So Blink enables businesses to launch IoT software solutions in just a few weeks and without even having to have any software expertise. So our typical customer produces electronics goods, anything from air conditioners to vertical farms to street cleaning devices, EV chargers, you name it. And today's reality is that these devices are expected to be connected, and they are expected to have an app or some sort of digital interface. And these companies have two options. They can hire a bunch of engineers, spend a few years building their own solution with web dashboards, cloud, mobile apps for customers, and then maintain all of this. Or they can just sign up for Blink and get all of the software out of the box and start selling their products as soon as possible.
Excellent. So Blink takes care of all of their IoT software needs. And what about the hardware?
Great question. So Blink is a hardware agnostic platform, which means the company selects a chip based on their needs and budget, and then just uses our libraries or API to connect it to Blink. So they're not locked in with any specific hardware vendor, and they can even switch if their needs change further down the road.
And what would you say is the most valuable functionality that Blink provides?
Well, so our customers say that we cover 90 to 100% of all of their IoT use cases, which is a whole lot of functionality. But if I were to highlight a few, it's definitely our no-code mobile app builder. It allows you to publish branded native iOS and Android apps in literally 2 weeks. I'd also call out device provisioning. We offer an industry-leading device commissioning flow. It is super easy and super user-friendly on the outside and packed with complex functionality under the hood. But really, user management, over-the-air updates, automations, notifications, rule engine, it is all there.
Excellent. So what's next? Any new features that you're working on?
A very timely question. We just launched Blink Blueprints. So Blueprint is basically a pre-built device template. So it comes with ready firmware code and pre-configured mobile app and web dashboards. You just copy the blueprint, follow the guide to set up hardware, and you've got a working connected device with its own app, really in minutes. It's just another step forward in our mission of making IoT software development really simple.
Awesome. So where should our listeners go to learn more about Blink and Blueprints?
Just go to blink.io, that is blynk.io. Try the platform for free or get in touch with us.
Excellent. That's Blink, blynk.io. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacy Higginbotham, and today's guest is Scott Ford, who is the co-founder and CEO of Pepper. Hello, Scott. How are you today?
Hi, Stacy. Great to be with you. How are you?
I'm great. So thank you so much again for coming on the show. I am super excited because Pepper is about to launch something kind of novel in the field of cyber insurance for homeowners. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want us to talk about what it is that Pepper does.
Sure. Pepper provides a comprehensive smart home platform that seamlessly connects and controls a wide range of devices, from security cameras to sensors to smart lighting and thermostats. Pepper is a multi-tenant platform serving consumer-facing enterprises who want to leverage the benefits of IoT for their business and ultimately for the relationship with their customers.
So your customers are actually the people who I'm actually buying devices or systems from in most cases.
So we partner with big corporations, consumer-facing corporations who want to leverage IoT to develop stronger relationships with their customers, drive incremental revenue streams. And so an example is we work with a consumer electronics manufacturer who distributes devices through mass market retail. We create the digital relationship between our enterprise brand partner and the consumer. And so as part of that relationship, we create services that the consumer can buy under the brand of our partner. So an example of that would be cloud storage for a Wi-Fi connected camera. The consumer pays on a monthly basis to store their videos for a period of time.
And then you share in that revenue stream with the cloud camera maker.
And then we share in that revenue stream with our, in this case, consumer electronics partner.
Got it. Okay. And that brings us to today's news, which is in the insurance space, which we're like, what? I guess there's connectivity in the insurance space. Y'all did actually buy Notion back in December, and that was an insurance play. But you're launching cyber insurance with a partnership with a company called Embedded Insurance.
That's correct. So embedded insurance is the name of our partner, but it's also a trend in the insurtech world. So what the idea of embedded insurance is a type of insurance that's seamlessly integrated into a customer's buying experience, whether it be through a product, service, or a platform. It allows businesses to offer insurance coverage as part of their product or service, providing a more seamless and convenient experience for their customers. An example that everybody is familiar with: when you rent a car, you can often purchase collision damage waiver insurance at the time of rental. This is an example of embedded insurance. And so our partner, also named Embedded Insurance, is an insurance enablement and technology partner for Pepper. Their role is to identify various insurance policies that are relevant and value add to the customers that we are supporting for our enterprises.
So in this case, you're working with a company called Embedded Insurance, and you are going to launch personal cybersecurity insurance for end consumers? Or is this something like I might end up buying through another one of your partners, like a consumer electronics maker or an ISP or something like that?
No, these are consumer services. So in this case, it's digital insurance for cases of cyber financial fraud, cyber extortion, cyber bullying, identity theft, those types of things. And so the consumer buys the policy on a monthly recurring fee in exchange for the protection of certain cyber events.
So what does that look like for me as a consumer?
So if you bought a device and you're running the app, which is a Pepper app, to control that device under the brand of our partner, you will receive in-app messages or email indicating the opportunity to buy a personal cyber care insurance policy. So it's a value-add service as part of your experience with your connected home device.
Okay, so does that mean like my connected camera would come with cyber insurance as an add-on option?
No, this would be after you have, connected your camera to your home Wi-Fi and you're enjoying your connected camera. We as a company consistently identify value-add products to make available to those users. And we've identified personal cybersecurity as insurance as an in-demand product. It's new and evolving, but it's a very hot trend in insurance world where consumers want some level of protection in the event of cyber fraud or cyber extortion or cyber bullying, that type of thing.
Okay, now we're going to talk about some of the things you're offering then, because there have been services that protect your identity and offer you payments if it gets stolen. So that feels established. But some of these, like cyberbullying, feel like, what the heck are you talking about? So can you talk in a little bit more depth about some of these features?
Sure. In short, cyber financial fraud are crimes that are committed with the intent to illegally acquire and leverage an individual's sensitive information for monetary gain. Cyber extortion is where cyber criminals threaten to disable the operations or the individual and compromise its confidential data unless they receive a payment. Cyberbullying examples there include sending, posting, or sharing negative, harmful, false, or mean content about someone else. Identity theft, obviously, is fraudulent acquisition or use of a person's private identifying information, usually for financial gain. So there's a variety of products here that are covered by this policy that generally relate to an external party illegally accessing a network or a device. And so this is coverage to protect you from those types of situations.
So because you're offering it through embedded insurance, this does not suddenly turn Pepper into an insurer, which has a bunch of legal and weird qualifications that you've got to meet, correct?
Correct. Embedded insurance is the entity that carries all of the regulatory requirements to offer such products.
And it doesn't matter what devices I am using. This is just I pay, and I think the cost is $7.50 a month.
The typical product is $5 a month, and you get these broad array of protections, in the cyber security breach world.
But to get it, I don't go to you. I don't go to Embedded. I'm going to get it through one of your partners.
You're going to receive it either as a notification in your connected home app branded by one of our partners, or you may get it through email communications through the relationship you have with one of our partners.
Now, this does not necessarily protect against these devices opening up any holes. Because at first I was like, oh, what an interesting idea, because I have a ton of connected devices. But this is just blanket coverage no matter what you own on the device front.
Yeah, this is remediation in the event of a cybersecurity hack, if you will. So remediation could be in the form of monetary coverage. It could be in the cyber bullying realm. It could be support from specialized counseling, right, to help kids through whatever issues they have. So it's kind of a broad set of coverages, but pretty interesting appeal to a lot of consumers out there today.
And this is not Pepper's first foray into insurance. Y'all purchased Notion in December, and that's, I think, the last time we talked. So can you talk to me about where you see insurance going with connected technology?
Absolutely. So first, think of Pepper as sort of the vessel to solve insurance-related problems, whether it's for a insurance carrier or policyholders of insurance companies' customers. So the first thing is we acquired an InsurTech IoT company called Notion back in December. And what Notion is a multi-purpose sensor that detects water leaks and smoke and carbon monoxide, and it has accelerometers and other kinds of sensors on the device as well that insurance carriers purchase today and provide to their policyholders for two reasons. One, to get an early warning notification to prevent a slow leak becoming a disaster in the home kind of thing. So from an insurance carrier perspective, the value there is to get in front of a claim or reduce a potential claim. The other thing is the data that's generated from these devices is very valuable to insurance carriers that ultimately can help them be more precise in their underwriting of the risk from household to household. So the idea of IoT in insurance is a huge idea, and you only have to look as far as State Farm Insurance's $1.2 billion investment in ADT just for that purpose. So the insurance industry is really hopping right now with regard to interest in IoT to fundamentally change the insurance business model.
To be clear, that's how connected devices are changing or providing opportunities for insurance. The cybersecurity insurance has little to do with the advantages or benefits of a connected device. This is more just about, we have all these devices. This is an interesting product to layer on. So what is happening though behind the scenes? Because there is still a tech story to be told about being able to add this sort of capability onto a traditional policy through your platform.
Correct. Yeah. So this is also an opportunity for insurance carriers to sell their other products or complementary products. So if you're a customer with a auto policy, bundling that with home is a big win for the insurance carrier. And by having a connected relationship with the policyholder and the related data, it's easy for us to identify those most apt to bundle their insurance. So just because there's connected devices in the home, they provide a really good utility on a use case basis. But behind the scenes, the data that's gleaned from those interactions are really helpful for the insurance business model.
Now, there isn't a way, or is there? I don't know, for an insurer to suddenly see, like, I don't know, new malware coming, or maybe they're like, oh, because I have this technology in the home already, it could help them write these cybersecurity policies?
Sure. Yeah. The more distribution of these policies and the related data that's collected absolutely helps with the creation of the policies. It helps with identifying risk in a way that they can price these policies to avoid an upside down business model, that type of thing.
Yeah, it feels like $5 is probably too little to offset the damage that these sorts of attacks can have. I mean, if you're talking about paying for counseling, for example, that's expensive.
Yeah, frankly, I wouldn't know where to turn if one of these things happened to me. I think what this brings is that service of, all right, it happened. Now what? And so these are the policies that kind of hold your hand through the remediation process. So you can go get your laptop fixed or go get the data that was stolen from you, that type of thing.
So this particular insurance product is your first deal with embedded insurance. Do you plan on adding on to that or doing more?
Absolutely. There's a whole series of policies and concepts that we are pursuing to offer, end users through the embedded technology. Things like warranty and repair of the connected devices, you've acquired for your connected life. Things like personal lines insurance policies that are homeowners or automotive insurance policies. We have a line of pet feeders, for example, that if we know you're a consumer of a connected pet feeder, that means you have pets and we can sell you pet insurance. So things like that are all on the table in terms of how we position, this technology going forward.
Well, now, if you've got a partner who's a connected alarm vendor and you know that I never set my alarm, does that mean you're going to not offer me home insurance?
We're just going to tell on you. So maybe a different example would be that if we collected data based on what time your house goes to bed at night and gets up in the morning compared to your neighbor who's up all hours of the night, the risk profile is going to be different for those two homes, and the insurance carriers can factor in the risk based on that kind of behavior. So that's absolutely part of the data collected to understand how best to underwrite at an individual level beyond what they do today, which is credit reports, right? So now they have real-time behavioral data from which they can glean information that can be applied to a risk profile. And then that would be the basis of how they price their policies to the various homeowners.
That sounds terrifying to the younger, less risk-averse me. It sounds fine to the 45-year-old version of me that is sitting here today going, yes, I am home all the time and not doing anything too exciting.
So the idea of embedded insurance in IoT provides a really novel way for insurance carriers to better understand how to underwrite their policies. Similar to the embedded connectivity in vehicles that can track driving behavior, which helps insurance carriers underwrite auto policies, the same can be said for the devices and technologies in the homes to better understand the potential risk of a home as compared to, my house, which everybody's in bed by 9 p.m., but my neighbors are up till 2 a.m. every night. That's a different risk profile. So it would be helpful for the insurance carriers to understand how to better price their policies to consider those types of risks.
Okay, so y'all are using things like just device data to match people to potential policies. So that's like demographic data. And then at a separate level, we're talking about insurance companies that are using device data to maybe price policies or assess risk. So these are two separate things.
Correct. And every insurance carrier is going to be different. We designed these as well as the data analytics based on what the insurance carrier needs are. So the examples I gave are simply that, and really to reflect on the value or the insights that this data can bring is pretty valuable to industries like the insurance industry.
Yeah. It turns actuarial data into like real-time data instead of just stats.
That's right.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show this week.
Thank you, Stacey. It was fun. Appreciate you having me.
Okay, so thanks everyone for listening to this week's Internet of Things podcast. I really appreciate it, as does Kevin. And if you want to find out more information on the Internet of Things, you can find it at my free weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday. You can sign up for that at www.stacyoniot.com/newsletter. Or you can just visit the website for all of those stories published a little bit later. Thanks for listening and have a great week.